chains, all-wheel drive.
Yeah, you should be fine.
I brought boots, gloves,
Yeah.
pants, and a jacket in case I am actually like in the elements putting chains on. I really hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna bring food because the Trans Canada was closed.
I was gonna say, because if you get stuck for a couple hours in your car,
I have that emergency
Like-
pack, but I don't want to eat any of the food.
take a candle, like take a candle, they say, right? Because a candle, like a couple candles, like that actually can give off some heat in the car, like in the tiny little car,
Well,
right?
I'm gonna keep the gas tank fuller than I usually.
Yeah.
So like I probably normally wouldn't stop in Revelstoke, but I will this time. So
Yeah.
just anyway.
Yeah, definitely take some good snaps.
It'll be colorful.
Well, be safe.
And take some good snacks.
But yeah, we'll go for
Some caviar.
yeah. I was thinking like chocolate bars, gummy bears and stuff like that, but you know. Yeah, we'll do it next week whenever you're back. Because it's not this, you know, how's it going? It's going okay. It's going exactly as expected.
Okay.
With no the danger.
Okay.
Is that, I get an email contact with the former foster and the person
No,
who's taking
it's
it,
the
like,
logo,
hey,
it's covered here.
Oh, it's just
haven't
full
had any,
screen.
like,
Yeah.
things or calling couches, you're doing well.
Oh well.
I was like, that's the standard.
Fantastic.
It's
Tell us
standard.
what
Oh,
you
it's
want.
like,
It takes time too. Like the first week is usually really hard because they don't know what's going on or what's accused.
Yeah, and neither does my dog, like, when he's, like, what is going on? Who is this other dog sleeping with us and taking up room on the couch? And like, no, I'm in your lap first, you know, that kind of stuff. Anyways.
So I feel like we're just waiting for Emma. Carolyn's right there. Carolyn's away. I thought Bruce was gonna come.
Bruce, Erin doesn't come to these?
No.
Do we have any
Paulo,
Paulo
Paulo,
or
Sherry
Sherry or Con?
No, I don't. Con usually tells me if he's gonna know.
We'll see if I got regrets. I know.
Are you joining?
Yeah, we can surprise myself.
You're just joining the committee? Have you always been on this?
If you want to live.
Volunteer.
You've been volunteering on the committee? Excellent.
I'm representing planning.
Ryan
Well, I
Foster,
was just thinking,
Brett
gee.
Brown.
Hey, what was that?
Nothing? Nothing, I didn't say anything.
I love the Valentine theme.
That's very nice.
Oh, it's you, right?
No, it's emergency red and closes always pink.
Oh, it's always Valentine.
It just happens to be together.
We don't really have closed meetings.
We've never had a closed
And
meeting
I've
before
never
since I've been
participated
on.
in a closed meeting, so this is exciting.
Well, it's not happening yet.
Yeah. No, we won't discuss anything here. Okay, got it?
Robin?
Hello, how are you?
Well, I guess we should just get started and Bruce can get here when he gets here. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Sounds great.
Lovely.
Maybe that's Bruce Day.
We all.
We all will.
Or not. Okay.
It's not closed yet. You're welcome, right?
Yeah.
We may have public comments.
It's true. They can still come flooding in.
Any moment now.
So, I will go ahead and open the meeting. Can I make one tiny change to the agenda?
The open agenda?
The open agenda, yeah. Can you just put the word debris into 6.1?
You had to wait till the camera went on for that, eh?
Disaster debris management.
Disaster debris management. That's totally my fault. I was, that's fine. Does anyone have any other changes or things they'd like to add to the agenda today? Oh, hey guys.
Hi.
That's okay. Welcome.
I can take the comfy chair.
Why not? If someone else wants to take the comfy There's another comfy
Oh,
chair right
okay.
here. Everybody can go comfy so far.
No worries. The ferry was loading. I got to witness traffic in Bowen.
Oh, rush minute.
Rush hour. Yeah.
Rush minute.
Rush minute every hour.
Because no one could turn left. So
Yeah.
yeah, it takes about 3 minutes. Right?
Yeah.
3 minutes.
It's just easier to say rush minute.
So does anyone have anything they want to add to the agenda today?
There's
Bruce.
Hi, everybody.
There's one more comfy chair.
Hey,
One more comfy chair.
A comfortable chair.
oh, a comfortable chair.
A
I
comfortable.
thought you said a company chair. Wow. Unless it's across from
Welcome, Bruce.
Thank you.
Thank you
Sorry,
for
I'm
coming.
late.
Can I get a, does anyone have anything they want to add to the minutes, or to the agenda, sorry? Okay, can we, can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please? Thank you.
And I'll second that.
Great. And then, hopefully everyone had a chance to quickly look through the minutes from, oh, all in favor? Great, thanks. Can I get a motion to adopt the minutes that are included in your agenda package? Did anyone have any changes to the minutes before we do that? That you all read thoroughly before you?
Thoroughly, oh, just, I was so prepared, like weeks ago, I was so ready.
I can
Do we
sign
need like
off.
10 minutes of silence to read the package first? So when you're ready, can I get a motion to adopt the minutes, please? Thank you, Sophie.
I'll second.
Thank you, Rob.
Wait, was I there?
And then I say, all in favor? Great. Good. There are no members of the public present, I don't believe. And then a review of the action items. Okay. Okay. So number one, Steph, I feel like that was done.
Right. Yes,
Great. Number two, did we determine that yes, for sure, business continuity is the subject of the next EDC?
so that I broached that with them, you were there, and they,
I don't think I was there at the last meeting.
oh, they all kind of
It felt fine.
couldn't handle the conversation at that time. They're not there yet. I guess they're probably,
We have a meeting next week?
yeah,
Yeah, so let's just keep it as an action item.
yeah. And we'll make it an actual agenda item next week instead of,
At the EDC?
yeah,
Okay. Oh, that brings us to number three, okay.
yeah. And so,
In progress. 2 and 3 are in progress. Number 4, research the 3 attempts. I'm putting this off for now because we won't be looking at that bylaw until the new senior bylaw officer is in his position sometime in November, and then he has to take some time to settle in. But from what I understand, this will be the first bylaw that he updates.
Where are we, sorry?
Number 4, research the 3 previous attempts to update.
We're on, this
Page
page, the
8.
action items.
Sorry.
Okay, I was going on the action items from the
Am I
last minutes, so,
Am I doing this?
Wrong page 8 of 18.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they're all broken out into a separate document.
So, number 4, research the fire prevention bylaws. We're waiting for that person to be in that position before any more work with that continues. I would honestly say that this dam work is done. I looked into the,
this damn work.
Dam work. Number 5, there was a question raised about the sort of seismic stability or status of the dams that are on the island. And so I did some research into how they're classified and what the classifications of our dams are, and I have that information for anyone who would like to see it. But I think otherwise 5 is complete.
And may I, like, were you satisfied that they're in good shape, or do we simply have knowledge of their condition?
There are requirements at the provincial level that inspections are done regularly or at different intervals depending on the consequence rating of the dam. So I don't have technical knowledge of dam stability, but they're all pretty, I shouldn't say they're all rated low consequence, but none of them are high consequence, so,
So that means they have been inspected?
correct. Yeah. And they have to be regularly.
I see.
And they have to have emergency management plans for the dams, which have been shared with me. Okay. Think about choosing HRVA priorities. Yeah, I realized that I had brought that up, but in looking at the HRVA and the recommendations that were in it, I'd say we're working already on at least a third of them, just in what I'm doing in my day-to-day work. So I feel like I wanna just put this off until, a lot of these grants are dealt with. For those of you that don't know, I'll talk about it in my update, but I'm administering 3 grants right now and applying for a further 4, and that's taking up a significant amount of my time. But through that grant funding, we are addressing our HRBA priorities. So my impression is that I'd just like to take this off the list for now and revisit the HRBA in the new year or next year. How does everyone, what do you guys think of that? No objections?
I think I'd know more after you discuss it.
Okay. Last meeting or 2 meetings ago, I think, we had talked about going through the HRBA, identifying actionable recommendations and working on them. So the suggestion was, you know, do we pick 1 or 2 hazards and start moving forward on those to start, or do we, I'm trying to remember the conversation, and I think this is roughly it, or do we take, you know, a couple recommendations for multiple hazards and start working on them? But the reality is, I am working on them. There's a lot of progress being made even since that HRB was published earlier this year, so I don't know, even if we identified more, that I would have the time to address them, and I feel like a lot are being addressed now as it is. So yeah, I'm looking to put off sort of reevaluating the HRB until 2019.
And then we'll know the result of the grants that you've received and what's been done, and then also the ones you're about to apply for, we'll probably know some of them by then, so then that could help influence whatever we might prioritize.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay. And then 7, find out if there's more advanced training for rapid damage assessment. I actually didn't look too much into this, and my understanding, Robin, correct me if I'm wrong, is that the rapid damage assessment training will be revised in the next period of time based on the outcome of that framework?
It may be, but I don't know how quickly that's gonna happen,
Okay.
because really the project I'm working on is this framework, we've just setting up an advisory committee, which I'll update on,
Okay.
and I don't know when curriculum and the development of that curriculum, how that's going to, how quickly that's gonna follow. So yeah, if you haven't got much traction, I can certainly work with you and my contacts at BC Housing.
No,
to
it's
talk-
that I
no?
haven't tried.
Okay.
Yeah,
Got it.
It's not them, absolutely not their fault. So that's
Yeah.
still there as pending, I need to do that.
And then I do have a contact, because the EIBC is looking into having trainers, local trainers, provide training for architects. And so we're working with a local engineering company that is probably gonna do it, so I can give you their contact, just see if they might be able to help you with because basically they're adapting a sort of more standard one for architects, so they might be able to adapt for whatever it is that we're looking for.
Thanks.
So I can give you that.
Yeah, I think the discussion was that the RDA training that's available was probably appropriate for members of the public, but people like Ian and construction workers, it was a little bit too basic. So was there sort of a next step or next level? And I honestly just did not do it, so.
Is that the same one is the one that you guys took, was that the same one that I took? It was,
Was that North Shore Management or North Shore Emergency, whatever?
okay,
It's put on by BC Housing.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one.
Yeah, and it is aimed at, not total lay people, but it is aimed at kind of more the general public.
Entry level.
Entry level, that's a good way to put it.
Facilities maintenance
Facilities
people,
maintenance
yeah.
people without specialized technical knowledge necessarily. So, yeah, it's that lower audience, lower level, technical knowledge.
And consider sections of the emergency management plan to revise. I think, as I may have indicated at the last meeting, I'm probably gonna sort of split up the chapters and give like 2 people a section or a chapter to just help me with review and edit and that sort of thing. So unless anyone has anything pressing in the emergency management plan that they'd like to help revise, I feel like this is going to be removed from the action items. Thank you all for going through that with me. Okay, let's do our updates, my favorite parts. So I'm just hoping we can go around the table and that everyone can share with the rest of the group anything that they are working on or have recently done. I know some of you have been to training lately that you would like to update us on. Bruce, do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm looking at the emergency communications, the emergency communications piece for my group. included. And I want to follow a model that some of the other municipalities are starting to follow, and that is to rely less on the amateur aspect of this. And what I would like to do is, working with Jan, I've just come up with this recently, is I want to use the commercial radio frequencies that the municipality has. Apparently they have 2 of them. I thought we only had 1 of them. But my idea is to, because I'm having such a problem with recruitment, I'd like to open it up more to the general public and use the private frequencies that the municipality has. And that way I can get more, I'm hoping I can get more recruitment and a little less problematic being from the amateur licensing side of things. It'll open it up and give a lot more people who are very active in the outdoors and so on the opportunity to work in the emergency management program. And because I'm so limited with just using amateurs at this point, it's a crapshoot if anybody's gonna be around when they need them, right? So,
Because they have to get the amateur radio operator's
exactly,
license.
and there's only 5 of us on the island, and half of them are off the island at any given time. So I want to enlarge on the concept of the communications program, and I'll have to work with you, and I guess we'll probably end up speaking to Bob too about his feeling about it. And start taking it in a there's a Y in the road here. So I've got to do something, because I just don't have enough people, and people aren't available when I need them, and they're not available for exercises and so on.
How did the hamburgers go?
It went, oh yeah, and so we did do 1 exercise, and there was a total of 5 of us. 2 people from town came, from the North Shore team, which was, one of them was their director. So it worked extremely well. It was kind of interesting because from a technical point of view, we didn't have nearly what we would have liked to have had, and yet we were all in touch with each other from one corner of the island to the other, despite, you know, not the kind of technical equipment that we could have used to make it a lot better. So the long and short of it is, we're doing okay logistically, but it's the manpower, it's the human resource behind it that I have to get expanded and start to rethink it. And the North Shore has done it, and it's been working successfully for them.
So Bruce, does it mean if you switch to that the people you might recruit don't have to take the advance,
Yep.
do they have to have the license?
No, they don't have to have a license.
Ah, so they can just.
So we'll be using private radios on assigned Industry Canada frequencies, and we can do our own in-house training here on the island, and we can start recruiting people who are just out all the time, like people who are hiking and that sort of thing. It's just a much broader spectrum with less restrictions. The amateur thing is just too restrictive. They, you know, nobody wants to sit and spend 2 months, you know, learning to get a license. I mean, heck, I can teach them how to talk on the radio. They don't need a license.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, no, that makes a lot of
It
sense.
makes way more sense.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at.
Thank you.
My only update is the project that I'm working on, which is the post-disaster building assessment, 2-year-long federally funded project is coming to an end. So we're really at the sort of final editing and graphic stage. So hopefully me and my committee will be reviewing it the next couple months, and then at the end of the year it should be available. So I can share that with you. And then last month we had the inaugural meeting of, to carry that work forward, they're creating a committee, I think it's called the Post-Disaster Building Assessment, so PDBA, the BC PDB, it's a real mouthful, BC PDBA Advisory Committee. And so it's gonna have representatives from lots of different stakeholders, and we're gonna meet on I think only once or twice a year, or twice a year with some subcommittee work, just to kind of keep the work and the things that have been identified. So one that you said, like curriculum for training and all of that kind of stuff will probably be one of the subsets from this, to make sure that that keeps going and possibly funding or, you know, figuring that out. So it's the body that will keep it going. So I'll be sitting on that as a representative from the AIBC. So, and then of course, happy to share what I can back here.
Thank you.
I just have, I guess, training updates for the for the ESS and for EOC both. I recently did the Managing Walking Volunteers course. I should have been today at the information officer, the EOC information officer, but that was cancelled or pushed back until December. And then I have I'll be going to the director's workshop in Campbell River at the end of this month.
All right.
ESS, correct?
ESS, yeah, it's the director's meeting.
We're trying,
Director's meeting?
The
or
directors,
course?
it's a workshop.
Oh, okay.
we're trying to build some depth into the ESS team by having as many directors as possible, or as many people that are qualified. So I'm trying to encourage Tess to take the director course next year.
Marge,
I think so.
good course.
So that's in the plan, but not set yet.
Thanks, Tess.
I'm brand new. Hi. I'm Emma, island planner, and the only thing I have related would be the IPRM GIS workshop, end of November.
Are you gonna go?
I think so.
Oh, great.
It sounds.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so GIS for like emergency evacuation routes and stuff like that.
Fabulous.
That's excellent.
Thanks, Emma.
Nothing.
Mom, do you have any?
Nothing,
Nope,
nothing
okay.
there.
No, nothing happening with BC Ambulance these days?
Nothing we need to talk about right now.
Welcome, Paulo.
Hi, sorry about that.
No worries, thanks for coming.
I guess the latest update as far as my connection to this would be, I know last time I mentioned about the smoking bylaw thing, it's gonna be even more of a concern with the change of legislation with marijuana. So it might, I don't know what it's gonna look like, but I think at the first part of it might be like a sense of free-for-all. But yeah, as far as fire hazards and bylaws of forest, trails, beaches, and being more of a fire hazard for Bowen Island. But other than that, I think we're good to go.
Are people allowed to smoke marijuana in all the same places where they can smoke cigarettes right now?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
pretty much, yeah. And it's just depends on how much they're allowed to carry. The provincial regulations haven't been handed out. Some provinces have already, but BC hasn't yet.
So you'll have just a few weeks to figure
Yeah,
it out.
federally they've been set, but we can set certain fines and other little caveats to that. But yeah, it's still a learning process.
Quick question, what do they have in terms of driving impairment? Is there any of that in line in the?
Well, there's always been for drug impairment. We've always had trained members who, do the whole drug test outside of the car for marijuana or for anything. So that's always been in place. They're just having to get more members to get trained on that. Now, as far as an instrument, I believe they say there should be one by the time this comes through.
Yeah.
Good.
So we don't know what that entails. I'm not sure what it looks like. So there's a full body scan.
There is a federal, the federal government has
Laws in place.
backed, though I forget the instrument name. I know BTG's denied that they're not gonna use it, because of the temperature constraints and the size
Yeah,
of it.
there's that risk that we
Yeah.
have such high change in weather that it might not work in certain places.
Hmm.
Stay
I'm sure
tuned.
it'll be challenged on all sorts of grounds once it's out.
Yes.
Interesting.
Well, thanks, Paul.
Nothing on my end.
You could talk about the fire smart workshops.
Leave that up to you.
Okay, thanks.
I honestly don't really have much in terms of an update for me. Actually, I have nothing, sorry. I've been all gung-ho election planning, so.
That's keeping everyone here quite busy, it
Did
seems.
you get my photographs?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I did, cheers. Okay, thank you everyone for sharing. My turn. So, I just put my update in writing on page 9. I have to give something similar to the executive committee, so I thought that I would share it with this group as well. So I'll go through this really quickly. But the Emergency Support Services Program continues to be developed. A lot of people doing training, there's training on the island. We're still working on resource acquisition, so securing suppliers for food and lodging. Oh, there's a first aid course being offered in November. If anyone would like a free first aid course on a Saturday, please come, let me know. And I encourage you to spread that through your networks if you know of anyone who's interested.
That was what, Saturday, when?
November 17th.
Here, right?
At the meeting?
Maybe. On Bowen. It'll be on Bowen.
It's not too far.
It might be at one of the fire halls.
When do we have to let you know that? As soon as possible?
Yeah, sooner the better. And then the ESS team is now meeting monthly, and as usual, the municipal website has an ESS webpage, and you can find more details about upcoming training and meetings on there if you're interested. The AED program continues to be quite active. I'm now coordinating maintenance for 20 AEDs on the island through a network of volunteers, thankfully, because it would be a lot of work otherwise.
Do you know if they're logged with us, all sites?
Yes, they're all registered with BC Pad.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the new ones would then be on the Pulse Point map?
Yes. Yeah.
And if there's one in the
No,
general.
what did I hear about that? PulsePoint app doesn't take its data from the 911 registry. So apparently to get it into the PulsePoint app, it's like a user registers it. So you go to the AED, it marks your location, you take a photo, you send it in, they put it on. And so I don't think that's been done with all of the AEDs, but I was talking to Rotary about getting a volunteer to make sure they all were on that PulsePoint app. Do you guys are familiar with that app?
Yeah, so that would allow our dispatchers then to see and actually notify where closest AED is.
They're all
There's
registered.
quite
though,
a
with-
few of them already on Pulse Point. I don't know if it's all of them, but there's a
Yeah.
lot.
So all 20 are registered with dispatch through the BC PAD program. There's actually a little box that says, do you want this to be available to something like that. I can look it up if you'd like.
Okay, because BC Pad has shut down, have they not?
No,
Pad program?
I hope not, because all of our data is on their website, and I was there not 2 days ago and it was all working, so. Let's talk about this further.
Can you just quickly refresh my memory? The ESF monthly meetings are on the Tuesday, the first Tuesday, was that?
Second Tuesday.
Second Tuesday? Okay.
Did you want me to follow up with Rotary to make sure that you've got them all on the Pulse Point app?
That'd be great.
I'll follow up with them.
Thank you so much for volunteering to do that, Paula. Yeah, Sherry, let's touch base afterwards. I can show you what I see and you can tell me what you see and we'll figure out if we're on the same page.
I'll send an email and just make sure, because I was at the Resuscitation Academy conference in the summer and
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so as I briefly mentioned, I am currently administering 3 grants and in the process of applying for, four more. So the Emergency Social Services grant is almost done. There are a few remaining pieces before that's complete. The Emergency Operations Center grant, while we've received it, we've spent very little of the funds because most of those supplies are going into the new fire hall once it's built. And then the Fire Smart grant, I think that's going pretty well. We've put on 2 workshops. The provincial fire expert Bruce Blackwell came over and delivered them, and I did surveys afterwards to see how people responded, and they seem to be quite well received. So now I'm in the process of organizing the waste disposal day that's meant to incentivize people to undertaking work on their property. And then applying for 4 more. So the second ESS grant will go in this afternoon. So if you have anything you want on it, let me know. And then the evacuation, route planning, and Fire Smart grants will be what I'm working on in the next month or 2. So the second Fire Smart grant, we're going to look at updating our community wildfire protection plan, which should give us access to additional funding in future years. And as I noted, they're taking a significant amount of time. I underestimated how long these would take to administer.
This is pulse point. So you have, sorry to interrupt, you have 15 AEDs on
Yeah.
pulse point.
So 5 missing.
So if you download the app, you'll actually see which ones are present and which ones aren't.
Yeah, I have it, I just
Okay.
don't go on
It's also encouraged for everyone because you can set it to Bowen Island, so if you have first aid training,
it.
if you're the closest person to a cardiac arrest, right, you'll get notification to go start CPR, right?
Yeah.
So it is, we try to recommend everyone to download the app and have it. But that'll allow you to see the 5 you're missing.
Great.
Sorry.
No, that's fine, thank you. We've talked about that app, I think, at this committee before. So for those of you who didn't quickly go download that app, now's your chance to do it this time. But it's worth probably bringing up at like emergency social services meetings and ECT meetings and other people.
First aid course.
Yeah.
The first aid course.
Even just so that people can see where the AEDs are.
Yeah,
Because you could expand this to see exactly where
yeah,
the
Ideally, they
AED
are.
is.
yeah,
Right.
perfect.
I never done that training.
Okay, thanks. So this Fire Smart project support, this was written before the workshop happened, so that's now taken place. I tried to record it, but due to technical difficulties was unsuccessful, so it won't be going online, unfortunately. But hopefully we'll be able to do more next year because it was really well received. And yeah, now I'm in the process of coordinating that waste day, which has been colorful. Public outreach continues wherever possible. We were at BowFest, which I thought went quite well. We're doing activities for Shakeout, which I'll talk about later because they're on the agenda as an item. The extreme weather response shelter has come up again, so I'm continuing to try to liaise between the United Church, who will hopefully be providing the facility, and Lookout Society, who will hopefully be operating. And that looks promising. And mostly I just try to offer support and coordinate. I don't have a lead role in that, thankfully. We continue with staff training and development. We have media relations training in November for management staff and new council members, so that's crisis communications training in particular. Bowen's administration continues. We're going to do a test of the notification system the week of Shakeout. Oh, Ian, can you tell us where the night landings issue sits right now?
Well, the trailer is still down at the golf course. We've got the land cleared. So until that trailer's gone, we can't expand to put the topsoil down and seed it.
Is that the trailer that was the sales?
Yeah, it's supposed to be gone by the end of, well, it's supposed to be gone by the end of September, but now it's like the middle of this month.
Is that a temporary site?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be temporary for the next few years. I think,
Nice.
so.
Yeah. So we're working on getting those reinstated. It's getting very close now by the sounds of it. Emergency management plan update continues, although slower than I would like. I've completed a gap analysis, which you'll find in your agenda, and I'm seeking feedback on that from you guys. And the April 2019 target completion date is unlikely. Just a heads up. The crisis communication plan addendum is attached, so we've met that target, and we'll talk about that later in the meeting. Disaster debris management plan I'm working on, and the emergency guide for residents is almost complete, so I think you guys provided input on that. The contents have been delivered to Rethink via Sophie, thank you, and we're waiting to see what comes of that. Anyone have any questions about any of those items?
And working with Heligen for the site.
Yeah, so Helijet and MBCEHS hired a consultant to go to, I think it was over 20 communities that are in the same boat as us, essentially. And so we worked with that gentleman to look at the existing site, and then contracted him sort of separately to look at alternate sites that are available. There are none. The Bowen's not good for landing a helicopter, is what I've learned. So really that Seymour Bay is one of the only places that we're going to get a landing site. So the landowner down there has generously donated the space for now. but as the area becomes developed, it won't be an option, so we have to still continue to.
Can we
What are the-
think about that, just to make sure that, because he won't have anything to do with our side of the access of the helicopter site, it's more of the helicopter, so can we just make sure that the process for the ground ambulance and everything is set? You know, how to access, how to egress, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's in a flat parking lot, so.
okay, there's no gate, there's no, okay, easy access road, okay.
Yeah, and it's just a block away from where they've been going, not even, you
Yeah,
can see it from where they've been going
200 yards
previously.
maybe.
Okay.
What were the major encumbrances to the?
Can we talk about that offline? It's a long story.
You mean for the helicopter to land?
It's
So you're
that
saying-
whole helicopter thing is long.
In getting the site
Yeah.
identified and prepared, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, the helicopter story is an easy one, it has to do with your winds, right? And a flat landing site.
Yeah.
So,
Cool.
Moving swiftly forward. Oh, emergency management map. Okay, so I'm not making progress on this as quickly as I would have liked to. But you'll see on pages 10 through 14, what I've been up to. So essentially, my logic and reasoning is if we're updating this plan, we should be updating it to meet certain standards. So what I did was took those standards and evaluated our plan against them. So for instance, on page 10, we have in blue, it says Emergency Program Act, Local Authority Emergency Management Regulation. And I have another document that outlines why these have been identified as standards documents, and I can produce that if you'd like. But essentially, this is what sets out in law what needs to be in our plan. So I've taken those standards, which are in the left column, briefly evaluated our emergency management plan against them, and then made recommendations accordingly. So obviously the emergency management regulation needs to be met. I also used the recent Auditor General for Local Government report because that had a lot of what the expectations of the province are of local governments in terms of emergency management planning. On page 12, you'll see I used the Canadian standard, so the CSA group standard. And then on page 13, the BC Emergency Management System Guide, which also corresponds with the JIBC Developing Emergency Management Plans course manual. So both of those were used. So I guess essentially, if you've had a chance to read this and have feedback now, I welcome it. If you want to provide feedback via email or at a later date, that's also welcome. But I thought it was important that this group knows what we're trying to accomplish. What is the point of this update? So now I just have to go rewrite it.
So you're gonna consolidate
Is that
everything, or just,
What do you mean?
like it says here, like it says, one of them is a BCMES guide. So are you gonna be, editing it to fit Bowen Island, is that the plan, or just saying, hey, this is what is expected, the middle is what we have, and the last is what you recommend in order to get it up to par?
Right, and so what I would do is essentially take the recommendations in the far right column and make sure that they get into the plan when it's updated. So,
Wow. That's a lot. Thank you for doing all that.
no problem. Yeah. And then, now that you've all had a chance to read that in detail, on page 15 and 16 were really obvious, sort of things that were brought to my attention in like a brief, quick look at the plan when I first came into this position. So honestly, this was done about a year ago now, and just hasn't been incorporated, but these are also changes that will be incorporated into the plan. And I'll probably, I think I've said this before, but reorder and reorganize it so it's more user-friendly for people who are who need it from an operational perspective, who are actually in an EOC and trying to figure out what to do, as well as just include information. I mean, there should be more than there is about evacuation and evacuation operational guidelines, and yeah, so I identified all that in the gap analysis. So I welcome your feedback, a little light reading for tonight if you haven't already read the gap analysis, and please let me know if I'm missing something or it doesn't make sense or I'm doing it all wrong.
Do you want a date for the feedback? No. Just when you finished it?
April 2019.
I honestly don't know that I'll be able to pick up the emergency management plan for a month or two anyway, so I'm not worried. But I'd appreciate any input that you'd like to give. Anyone have any comments on that before we move to disaster debris management? Okay. Oh, and I'm early. Okay. So I just wanted to sort of give this group some background on disaster debris management planning, recap a workshop that took place here on the island in August, and then talk about the plan to move forward with this. So, yes, oh sure, thanks. So to give you some background, the Metro Vancouver Regional Disaster Debris Management Plan was developed by the Regional Engineer Advisory Committee working group, so part of RAC, the Regional Administrators Advisory Committee. These are essentially committees of Metro Vancouver. So it is a framework for disaster debris management for Metro Vancouver member jurisdictions, and it is scalable to consider the needs of disasters that are local, sub-regional, or regional. So through the research and the plan's development, it was emphasized that this takes place in the recovery stage, which I'll talk a little bit more about. So 4 or more days after an incident has occurred. And of note, it can be 25 to 45% of the total cost of a disaster. So it's important, relevant, and everyone else in Metro Vancouver is doing this. The goal was to have, so it was resolved in September 2017 that Metro member municipalities prioritize integration of this within our emergency management plans within 1 year. So we have missed that deadline, but we're still going to endeavor to get this done. I think this is going to be a very small plan. The Metro Vancouver one is hundreds of pages. I don't feel like we need that level of detail, and it'll probably be an addendum to the emergency management plan.
So this is a cost recovery program, or is it a physical program to deal with the
Physical.
physical?
So I'll go through the workshop. We had IPREM and Emergency Management BC come over to the island. They met with myself, Public Works, Kathy, and gave us an overview of disaster debris management planning and what's in the plan and what sort of needs to be considered. So the workshop was intended to familiarize us with planning and resources that will support development of our Bowen Island plan. So this diagram depicts the relationship between the emergency response and recovery phases and disaster debris management activities. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, this would be the response phase where we're actually dealing with the incident with life safety issues. Then we move into recovery, and there's short, medium, and long-term recovery. So they wanted to sort of show at what point disaster debris management is taking place. So during the initial debris clearing activities, the focus is on ensuring continued provision of basic human needs and key support services. So for example, making sure major routes can be used by emergency services personnel. From there, you're going to go into debris collection activities, focused on reestablishing the movement of goods and services, resuming business and economic functions, and undertaking environmental rehabilitation. And this might include assessing the overall damage at this stage. And then the final stage is focused on sustaining efforts to adapt to the new normal, quote unquote, which may include, replacement, rebuilding, or improvement what was of what was affected by the disaster, and efforts in this stage are geared towards rehabilitating or improving the livelihood of disaster-affected communities. And so activities at this stage are gonna be around moving debris from debris management sites, which are staging areas, to their final disposal locations, like landfills. So, if you wouldn't mind just, it's okay, there's only two. So this is sort of additional information about what activities we might undertake to address disaster debris management. So it could include clearing, identifying what areas need to be cleared, classifying, so classifying debris which affects where it goes, hauling, identifying what resources are needed to move the volume of debris. And I think that's something we really need to look at here. Do we have enough resources to move debris, or is everything going to be outsourced? What are the capabilities of Bowen Waste? And then if there were other incidents going on within the municipality, how accessible are those resources going to be? We're not going to be the only ones that need a dump truck or a backhoe or whatever it is. And then there's an estimation component. So part of our plan will be identifying how much, what volume of debris might need to be managed. And then we have to look at debris collection and processing. So where can we leave this temporarily while we wait for it to be taken away? So what types of sites are required to process the debris? And then debris collection and processing. Site types. So curbside collection versus neighborhood drop-off points versus temporary waste handling facilities. So I just grabbed these two images out of the presentation that was delivered to the workshop participants because I learn best visually and they appeal to me. I hope this sort of helps people get like a general idea of what we would be trying to do with a disaster debris management plan and what some of the activities that we need to undertake in that planning are. So in terms of next steps, there are a lot of forms, for instance, debris forecasting tools and templates and guides to assist us in creating our own plan. But we are going to need to compile a little bit of GIS data, assess our capacity, which includes discussions with Bowen Waste, identify potential sites on the island where could we temporarily leave rubble from houses destroyed in an earthquake, and then we need to write a short plan. So, if anyone is interested in disaster debris management and being involved in the planning process, I'm creating, or I'm going to create a small subcommittee of this committee or working group, whatever you'd like to call it, that will sort of address some of these questions. I can write the final plan, but I can't, unilaterally decide where we're going to put debris on the island temporarily. So I'm looking for, I'll have to get someone from Public Works. We don't have an environment manager of environment anymore, so I'm hoping that we can identify. Okay, yeah. So someone that could sort of look at things from an environmental perspective, planning and GIS in particular, I feel like we need help from. And then of course, Bowen Waste I'll bring into the conversation. So, does anyone have any questions? Is that kind of what you expected disaster debris management to be?
Pretty much.
Okay. So I'm going to make a little plan, a small one, that will align with the Metro Vancouver Disaster Debris Management Plan. And if anyone is interested in helping, get in touch.
What kind of skill sets would you see from that volunteer?
Well, like I said, I'm going to need particular municipal departments to be represented.
Okay.
But, knowledge of the island and emergency management and the desire to do the work required to get this done. Really
High on the list.
only criteria.
Just before Paulo left, he said he'd love to be involved.
Yeah, okay, so Paula for sure.
I'm sure there's a fire component.
So that's what's happening with disaster debris management. I just wanted to sort of pass along, what was learned when they came over in August and what this is.
Was that the 10-day thing?
No, it was a half day. Yeah, in the morning. Okay. Nobody has any questions about that? We're gonna move swiftly along to Shakeout. So I just wanted to highlight that everyone else is doing it, so we need to get on board. Shakeout is October the 18th at 10:18 in the morning. It's a province-wide earthquake drill. So the municipality is going to be participating at the municipal hall and at the rec department. And I'm working on other sites, municipal sites to participate as well. We have volunteers who are getting permission to ride the Bowen Ferry and give out earthquake-specific preparedness information.
On the 10th?
Yeah, and other times during the day. And then we'll also test the Bowen system that week, so that's still the plan. So probably before October 18th, we'll send out a test message using the notification system to the entire island and remind them to participate in Shakeout. And I'm a big fan of playing the audio earthquake file over the conference system in Municipal Hall, so you can't ignore me and not participate because it's loudly coming from your phone. But hopefully it'll be entertaining for people and engaging. If anyone has other ideas about things we should be doing, let me know. And I'd encourage you to participate at your work sites if they are not here, and to register that participation online. The more people that register online, from what I understand, the more advertising revenue they can generate, like Shakeout can generate, which helps promote the program moving forward.
So sorry, say that again, what should we do online, like?
There's a Shakeout BC website,
Okay.
and individuals and organizations are encouraged to register their participation. So just go on and let them know, yeah, we're going to be doing the drill on October 18th or even on a different date. Yeah, and that helps the whole program advance.
Who's the liaison? I'm just thinking maybe I can convince my CP to change his work days so that he can work with whoever's organizing events to assist possibly.
Fun. So I know the school does one as well, but it, there are off-island people organizing the broader provincial drill.
But is there anything here, like who he liaises with? or-
Me?
Okay.
What we would love is to have him ride the ferry. Apollo's coming, and people in uniform tend to attract attention. So a community,
Unwanted attention.
a community paramedic, even on just one of the runs, it's like less than an hour of their time.
What date was this that
It
we were
would be
gonna
lots
do
of
it?
fun.
October
October
18th.
18th.
It's a Thursday.
Oh yeah, Ian, are you available? Speaking of uniforms?
I think I'm in Kamloops.
Oh, that's nice.
Sorry, of course.
That's not.
And it's out of town.
That's not the one we're taking.
No, that's the 28th.
Do you know if all schools are doing the shakeout?
They should. Do you mean on Bowen?
Yeah.
Oh, I should ask IPS.
Do you want me to
Good
follow up
idea,
with
Wes.
that?
Yes.
I'll follow up with all, I'm recently doing the emergency plan with them, safe
Okay.
plan for school, so
Great.
I got their ear right now.
Okay. And if they need any resources, the resources tab on this page has tons of, posters and the audio file I
I'll
was
tell
talking
them to
about.
register.
And the registration.
Okay.
Yeah, just encourage people to participate and spread the word.
And do they do it at the level of like small children, like the daycare center or the preschools? Or is that, I gotta know what the age
I'm
range
not sure. There's no, they should.
Yeah, you would think so.
There's no reason
'cause-
they couldn't.
Yeah, there's no reason they couldn't, it's gonna happen.
Exactly.
It's older children. So yeah, I don't
They
know,
might
are
as well
you
do it.
I'll do
in touch with all of
Montessori
the?
and the
Yeah.
BCC, IPS, IDLC, and
Yes, cool.
Vix I know does it, so.
That's great. That's really helpful. Thank you, Paula. So I think that was all I had to say about Shakeout. They have some really funny videos too, I should share with the group, they've made little shakeout videos.
Yeah, they have great
now.
emotional stuff.
It's so goofy.
They're like little superheroes.
Yeah, have you seen those?
Yeah. Oh, was it, I think it was just there on the, is that,
Yeah.
oh no, those are just.
I don't know if I'll be able to find this without the link. It's so goofy. Okay, so I'll just do one.
Oh.
I don't want to waste.
Sound on?
No, there's no.
Sorry.
Have you guys ever had the shaking trailer?
Oh,
So like that you spin it,
I
you sit
want
in
to.
and it shakes you? We get it on the coast on the,
Yeah.
every so often.
Yeah.
ESS, we've talked about it, and it's a cost.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is subsidized, the insurance, there's an insurance bureau, I think, Insurance Bureau Canada, that subsidizes having it come over, but there is still a cost to communities or groups that bring it, and it hasn't been feasible so far, but I know that it's always well received. Have you been in it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and the
What did you
paramedics helped, it's been 2 years ago, my Seashell paramedics, because all the kids came through, and so they were kind of posted there for the day, rotating, and oh my gosh, it was a hoot.
Yeah.
It'd be great to do the BOPAS, that was the one you mentioned, was getting corporate sponsorship and
Yeah.
bringing it to BOPAS, that would be awesome.
That would be good if possible.
What does it simulate? A six.
An earthquake.
It shake, yeah.
So it's like a little cottage, shake cottage or something, it's
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing how hard it is to, you know, not fall on the floor and all, like, do all that stuff. They have you sitting down so you don't, the little ones don't hurt themselves, but, yeah.
Okay, I'm trying, I don't.
Before we end today's meeting, it's Linda's birthday.
So that's what you do, Jen?
Your costume.
So they made
Yeah, I was
four
gonna say, I
of
want one
these
of those costumes, I like that.
silly little videos and they are entertaining. I mean, there's lots more other resources available. If you think that'll be helpful in getting people to participate. Thanks for helping to spread the word. Okay, anyone have anything they'd like to say about Shakeout?
We will be advertising that through our municipal communications.
Oh, good.
Which is why it's so great that they have so many promotional materials, because we can just copy it and send it out.
It really is, the other thing I would say is I was in Tokyo, and it is a really valuable thing to be aware of. I mean, I lived through earthquakes monthly, and I remember my first earthquake waking up, and like, in my dreams, everything was shaking, but when you woke up, it was. And I ran outside, and of course, the Tokyo people were like, this is a minor one, sure, you don't run outside with minor ones. But it's really good, you know, just to be aware of how crazy it is when the ground starts shaking. So you do start to get used to it a little bit when you live with it, but how everything just flies. So.
Yeah, it'd almost be nice to have just a small one here. No damage, no injuries, nobody getting, but just remind people, like, we do live in an earthquake zone, you should be prepared. You shouldn't be buying water that day, it started in your house. Yeah, just a little one. Okay, I'm going to move to a closed meeting.
Vote.
Okay, you have to vote on that?
These recommendations.
I would just read it out loud. Okay, I would like to vote on this recommendation that the emergency Program Management Committee move to a closed meeting pursuant to Community Charter Section 91A. A part of a council meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered relates to or is one or more of the following.
You know what, I'm gonna change it to K anyways, so. K.
The section of the community charter, section 90, subsection 1.
You know what, because I thought the reason we were closing it was because they're gonna be talking about contacts.
Okay.
Yeah, I was wrong.
What's K?
And it's K, so K is,
It's not A.
section 91K.
And
Oh, I see.
page 2 of 18, this bottom bit,
Yeah.
it's not A.
Negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a municipal service that are at the preliminary stages, and that the view of council could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public.
Okay. Motion.
I will second it.
All in favor?